Hi, my name is George, and this will be a short tutorial on how to glue a new bumper on a Canoe Polo boat. So right now you can see I've removed the old bumper. It was pretty easy because well, it was coming off really easy, and all this is contact glue which is left on the boat, and you can see it peels off quite easy. So before you glue anything, it's actually good to clean the surface a little bit. So we're going to take this off. You can take it off with various tools. You can use a metal brush, or maybe just peel it with hands as much as you can, or maybe use a knife, but just don't break the boat. You don't have to use the tool that I used, which is this. It's really easy to deal with that one if you have one, but you can just do a knife, or you can get a brush with the metal feathers or whatever they're called, and you can get pretty good results as well. Now we've cleaned most of the stuff off. The nose is looking pretty clean now. We're just gonna pretty much what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna wipe it off with some acetone or something like that, some solvent, just to get most of the dirt away. We want to have a clean surface finish, so the glue will stick better. This is my practice boat. So it has a lot of gel coat on the very nose. You can see it here. For example, the gel coat is quite thick, or the residue or whatever. So it cracks off easily. Here apparently I had a hard bump. So basically now there's pretty much nothing on top of the Kevlar. And with time, when this gets water and moisture, this will get soft. So now is the good time to seal it. And that's quite easy to do. What we're going to do is we're going to wipe this clean. We're going to clean it up really good. We're going to go blow some air at it. And then we're going to take some super glue, super epoxy if you want to call it that. And then we're just going to cover this all the way. So it's not going to really add strength, really. But basically we'll keep the Kevlar dry. And that way the nose won't go soft. What I did now is I wiped it off with I found alcohol. You can wipe it off with pretty much any solvent. Just I prefer to use something that evaporates quickly. So acetone or alcohol is pretty good because the surface doesn't stay wet for a very long time. So you can clearly see now. I also sandpapered the edges just a little bit because they were quite sharp, and if you just put glue on those sharp edges, it's very probable that your glue is just going to drop off as one piece or crystallize and come off like that. So basically what I've done now is I've cleaned it up, and this is epoxy glue. If you're doing Canoe Polo, you should probably know what this is, or at least learn. It has two liquids, and you push them out, and then you mix them, and you have epoxy. And this dries out a lot faster than just using general standard resin. So we don't need that much. I kind of overdid it there, but I have a stick, and I'm just going to gently apply it here. And your point, or the main idea here is for you is just to have a bit of epoxy on top of the Kevlar, because that way moisture won't go into it and it won't go soft. So it's quite simple. This is actually the most crucial part for you to know is when you have a bumper and you have a specific boat, some suppliers or boat makers, they usually design the bumpers for the boats, and then some of them actually just buy bumper material and they put on the boat, and use it as a bumper. But especially with these nowadays used integrated bumper boats, it is really important that you get a bumper that fits really well. This bumper is bought from DPP in Holland. They make the dynamic boats. I think it's a good company. They do a lot of product development, and I really like their boats and their quality. And this bumper probably works really well with their boat. You see how it's carved into the nose of their boat. But unfortunately, this is a revenge boat. And this bumper is not really designed for this boat. So it will rather easily come off with time. And if I just put this bumper here, it doesn't have glue or anything on. So I'm just gonna stick it in there, and you see how the edges, they kind of come out, because just the bumper right here, you can see it doesn't really fit that nicely with the nose of the boat. So there's a few things you can do. What I do with these is that I'm gonna apply a lot of pressure after gluing, so the glue will stick it in and probably will be there, and it will hang out there for the necessary amount of time, which in my case is probably a year or so. But unfortunately, it not might work for you boat, or then again it might work really well for you boat. So the most important thing is try to get a bumper that fits your boat as good as possible. Alright, so we have the bumper, and there's some few, this is a plastic one that you can use to apply the glue, or then you can use a cheap brush. Just keep in mind that if you use a brush, you're not going to be able to use it again, or at least it's not going to be as soft as this, because the glue doesn't really come off that easy. For this case, I'm going to be using the brush. One thing to remember with using contact glue is when it reacts with air, it's going to become too sticky. It's not going to be as fluid as initially. So always try to close it up as well as possible, as good as you possibly can. So don't just keep it open for hours. Close it up, seal it well. The big canisters like this one, they actually have a good lock, so you can close them up pretty tight. And that way you can assure that your glue will stay fresh and good for a longer time. Basically, when you're applying contact glue, you apply it to surface A, and on this case surface B, which is the boat. And you don't want to have too much of glue. If you have way too much glue, that's not going to do you any good. So don't just splash it on top of surfaces randomly, but try to get a nice even surface and on both A and B, and then that should work pretty well. How to know when the glue has dried out? What you do is you wait for it until it becomes just a little bit sticky, because now if I put my finger in there and touch it, it will be totally sticky on my finger, but when it's dry, it shouldn't be as sticky. Also, one thing that I like to do is I like to put excessively glue even on the top of the boat and also under it, because that way I can assure that the part of the bumper that actually come a bit over will also stick on the boat. And if you have too much glue, it's really easy to wipe it off afterwards with alcohol or acetone or something like that. So it's not going to be dirty glue or ugly glue left. Alright, so the glue is now quite dry because when I put my hand in it, it doesn't stick. And also on the boat, the same thing. So to put the bumper on, what we do now is we spread it on and we try to find kind of the middle part. We look for it. And we have to attach the middle part first to the boat. We can't just push it like this. So what I do is I'll spread it. Then I have a look where the middle part is. And then I put the bumper on. And that's pretty much. These were coming off a bit, so I also put here at the very ends, also put a bit of glue so we can now stitch these guys just like this. And we're going to apply very quickly, just a little pressure. So I'm going to use a tie, and you can use tape if you don't have any of these. You can use pretty much any kind of tape. Just make sure it's not super sticky so you don't have to get the stickiness off your boat afterwards. But because tape you can only use once, I prefer you using these. It's more environmental. And so now we have a little bit of pressure here. We're also going to run a really long pipe like this around the whole boat so we get pressure for the front. But I'm going to show a picture of that later. That's it pretty much.